it's a great pleasure to welcome you to Kerala and to talk about your book, Who is Bharat Mata? In fact, I have a copy of the book for anybody who is interested. And I have to confess, when I first heard the name, I asked myself, what has happened? Has Purushottam also gone the Hindutva way? Because it seems as though a particular group of people have appropriated the term, who is Bharat Mata. And when I got the book, if not for Nehru on the cover, anybody would mistake it for towing a particular line which is very popular or which is being pushed very strongly in India today. So let me start off, Purushottam, what motivated you to write this book and why this name, Who is Bharat Mata?
Okay. So first about the title itself. The title, as you know, Venu, I have...
Can everyone hear? I think just hold it a little closer to you.
Can you hear me now? Okay? Yeah. It is taken from a paragraph in Discovery of India by Nehru, where he actually mentions that I go to many meetings and people shout the slogan, Bharat Mata Ki Jai. And if you remember, the Bharat Mata Ki Jai slogan was not a Hindutva slogan during freedom movement. It was the slogan of national movement, freedom movement. So Nehru raised this question with his audience, that when you say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, what do you mean? Who is Bharat Mata? Whose victory you desire? So the answers typically were that this whole country is Bharat Mata, Ganga is Bharat Mata, Himalaya is Bharat Mata, Kaveri is Bharat Mata, and so on and so forth. Nehru responded, and I have quoted in my book, that yes, all right, all these geographical expenses, all these great mountains and rivers, monuments, from south to north, east to west, are Bharat Mata, but most importantly, the people of Bharat is Bharat Mata. The ordinary men and women of India are Bharat Mata. So when we say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, we mean, or we should mean, the victory to the people of India. So in fact, it's very unfortunate, and it reflects more on the secular and democratic politics of this country, that many of traditional and cultural symbols have been appropriated by the politics of certain kind which you refer to. And therefore, the title, in fact, I wanted to title this book plain and simple, Bharat Mata Ki Jai, which was even more provocative. And my publisher was very uncomfortable with this title. He said, no, we can't have this title, Bharat Mata Ki Jai. So we went on thinking about it, and finally, once I was discussing the theme of this book with Ramchandra Guha. So he suggested the title, that instead of Bharat Mata Ki Jai, you make it, Who is Bharat Mata? Because that actually is the question which Nehru posed, and which this book tried to pose. And Venu, this question has acquired an additional potency and poignancy these days. Because these days, Bharat Mata Ki Jai has become a slogan of aggression, of hatred, of identifying communities which are not legitimately Bharat Mata or part of Bharat Mata. The book actually is an intervention against this kind of politics, and it's a reminder that the victory cry for Bharat Mata Ki Jai, cannot be a slogan at the same time consisting of the anguish and agonies of many sons and daughters of Bharat Mata, who may not be Hindu by religion. But the point is that we have to have an inclusive nationalism, we have to have an inclusive idea of India, and I personally feel that Bharat Mata Ki Jai, logically and historically, is a slogan which belongs to this idea of India, that is inclusive idea of India, not to the exclusionist or communal idea of India. That is why I deliberately titled my book, Who is Bharat Mata?
Thank you. In fact, Nehru writes about how when he started talking about what Bharat Mata is and what it means to the masses, to the public, millions of people, it felt as though suddenly their spirits were lifted, their eyes light up, they feel that they are part of a much larger enterprise, the building of India, the building of the nation. And Bharat Mata is not just rivers, mountains, oceans, whatever. It is the people more than anything else. So this book, it has a subtitle on history, culture, and the idea of India. It has an extensive introduction by Purushottam, and then it compiles writings by Nehru from various books written by Nehru, primarily the autobiography as well as the Discovery of India. It also contains articles or descriptions of Nehru, essays on Nehru written by various people of his period and subsequently. So Purushottam, going on to the next question, you talked briefly about the appropriation of icons, of symbols, etc. We see that Sardar Patel has been appropriated, Mahatma Gandhi has been appropriated, but Nehru alone is completely rejected. Why demonize Nehru? What is it in Nehru that causes fear to certain sections who are pushing a particular narrative?
Okay. Now let me start with a very current affair, and then I'll go back a couple of years ago. You see, these days everybody is talking and listening about this Adani affair. I do not know anything of stock market, so I cannot comment on the merit or demerit of the affair, whether it's a scam or it's nothing but a storm in a teacup, as the Honorable Finance Minister puts it. I really do not know. But the fact remains that this is there, and a lot of controversy is taking place outside the media. No TV channel is discussing it. If you were to go by the Delhi TV channels, nothing has happened with Adani. But in reality, something has happened. So anyway, what I find very interesting, that I was sent a clip of a program. I have stopped watching TV at all for last almost 8 years. And I will advise particularly to the people of my age group, if you are concerned about your blood pressure, stop watching TV at all. Otherwise your blood pressure will keep on shooting up. So anyway, so I saw that clip and I found that people are talking of problem with LIC, scam in LIC and all that. It all started with Nehru. In 1958, there was Mundra case in which LIC money was misappropriated and all that. So it seems that maybe the Congress people or admirers of Nehru have forgotten, but Nehru continues to haunt his opponents. I mean, if you look at the elections in 2019 and even in 2024, and imagine yourself as a reporter or observer from Mars or Jupiter, you would feel that opposition forces are being led by Jawaharlal Nehru. Because every speech, every political attack starts or sometimes ends with Nehru. So Nehru's mistakes, Nehru's mistakes, Nehru's mistakes. Why is that so? For the simple reason that Nehru was a unique person in our national leaders. On one hand, he did not show up his religiosity or his spiritual inclinations. On the other hand, was uncomfortable with public display of religiosity, even by Gandhiji. Was uncomfortable with Gandhiji describing the earthquake in Bihar as a punishment for the sin of untouchability. As we all know, he was uncomfortable with these kind of statements. And so far as he himself was concerned, he categorically maintained that politics must be conducted in accordance with political principles, not in accordance with religious sentiments. And yet, that is the crux of the argument I have made in my introduction. He was not uprooted. He was not alien. India and its cultural diversity, its cultural legacy, its richness, even Hinduism in itself was not alien to Nehru. He was deeply rooted in Indic tradition and cultures, and he was so deeply rooted that he didn't have to show it off. You see, as I keep on telling that if you have something, you don't need to show off. I mean, Venu has been a career diplomat all his life. He doesn't carry a badge saying that former ambassador to Netherlands. You need not do that. So he did not need to carry his Hinduism up his sleeves. And that is why he had a great connect with Indian people. To my mind, his connect with Indian people was more significant, as a historian I would say, was more significant than even Gandhiji. Because Gandhiji conducted his politics, if not exclusively, but to a large extent in religious idiom. Nehru never used religious idiom. In fact, he went to the extent of saying that our dams and our factories are the new temples of India. And nobody's sentiments were hurt. So, This capacity of Nehru of connecting with people, deeply religious, supposedly religious society, connecting with the society with a very modern, scientific, not insensitive to spirituality. This is a myth about Nehru that he was insensitive to religiosity or he was insensitive to spirituality. This capacity of Nehru of connecting with people with his modern, scientific, forward-looking outlook and his complete unacceptance of religious sentiment as a political tool makes him the greatest challenge for the right-wing politics, whether of Hindu variety or of Muslim variety. It makes him the greatest challenge for right-wing politics. Therefore, you can appropriate Gandhi, you can appropriate Nehru, Patel, you can appropriate Subhash Bose and all that, but you can only demonize and demolish Nehru. And that is why this Demolish Nehru project has been going on since so many decades, so many years, and yet it is just. So Nehru becomes a great challenge to the forces of stagnation and reaction in political as well as in social and cultural sense. And that is why he needs to be demolished and demonized. That is the basic reason for that.
Well said. I think he was a great reaction to the forces of stagnation and communalism. Even in that period, he fought against both Hindu communalism as well as Muslim communalism. That was the context in which the freedom movement happened, and that is what shaped his ideas. And what you say is also very correct about showing off, because I know there are beautiful photographs of Nehru doing a perfect Shirshasana. So clearly he knew yoga well, he used to practice yoga, but he never went around advertising it.
Well, there are people these days who have a bigger belly than myself and claim to be proponents of yoga. Nehru was not like that, fortunately. And he could do perfect Sirsasana. These days, people who cannot perform the easiest asana, that is Padmasana, are proponents of yoga. So we are living in very strange times, Venu, for that matter. But not only this optics of performing Sirsasana, if you delve deep, you read Discovery of India. Nehru quotes the Nasadiya Sukta of Rig Veda in full. And what is Nasadiya Sukta? Nasadiya Sukta is from Rig Veda, which starts with the very innocent query that who knows the mystery of universe. So the answer is that the rishis know. Well, no, they don't know. Then maybe the gods know. Well, no, even gods do not know. They cannot comprehend the entirety of the mystery of universe. Then it's a kind of dialogue, maybe between two persons or maybe between two sides of the same person. So one side says that one who presides over this whole universe, Adhyaksh, Srishti ka Adhyaksh, one who presides over this whole universe, that is Paramatma or Param Brahma, he knows the mysteries of this universe. The answer is that no, not even he knows the mysteries of the universe. Nehru quotes this suk in order to underline that it has been part of Indian wisdom since age that no system, no philosophy, no statement of reality can claim a kind of finality. Knowledge, wisdom is an always ongoing process and project. Therefore, there cannot be any kind of closure of knowledge and knowing. And therefore, he continues to discuss this, that is the crux of Indian wisdom. And Nehru knew this. Nehru was honest enough to recognize that for people like me, that is Jawaharlal Nehru, born in a super rich family, tutored at home by British and French tutors, he said that I did not really know much about India. But when I came back from England and I started understanding the things, on one hand, he was exploring the nature and essence of India academically, so to say. On the other hand, politically. In 1919, having participated in Kisan movement in Uttar Pradesh for a while, he made a very interesting comment. He said that it is only people like us, educated in Western system, who believe that violence is the only form of political action. The Indian people know from their own interpretation and their experience, even before the arrival of Gandhiji, this is very important. Even before the arrival of Gandhiji, the value of non-violent resistance and protest. So Nehru was discovering India. The book was written only in 1945. But right since 1912, Nehru was trying to discover India honestly, self-critically, and academically as well as politically.
Indeed, and I think as part of this process of discovery, he engaged in a lot of introspection.
Yes.
In many places, he has himself said, sometimes I feel I was caught between different cultures. That he accepted that he was a westernized person, and he attached great importance to science and to development of a scientific temper. Yet his roots were very sound.
See, Venu, I sometimes feel very uneasy. In fact, I sometimes feel pity at the situation. We Indians ought to be proud of the fact that because of historical evolution, all of us are part of the legacy of three great civilizational processes. One, Indic, which includes Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, all kind of philosophical traditions, innumerable philosophical traditions. Second, Persian, Arabic, roughly speaking Islamic, and then the Western, European. All of us get this in a very natural way. My mother tongue is Hindi, and I'm conversing with you in English. And I learned English not through secretarial courses as young people do these days. I learned whatever English I have learned through English literature. So whether I know or I do not know, I had to read someone called Shakespeare or someone called Tennyson and about his life or his times or whatever. So this is part of our upbringing and we should be proud of it. There is no need to be embarrassed about the fact that one is rooted in Western tradition or one is rooted in Indic tradition or Arabic tradition or Islamic tradition. All of us have this as a part of our existence, and Nehru realized this. And therefore, for him, there was no necessary contradiction between being rooted in tradition and being modern. In fact, at one place, he makes a very pertinent remark that change has to come to India, but it cannot be forced from above. It has to evolve in accordance with the genius of Indian people. And he said this, mind you, in Lahore Congress, where the idea of Purna Swaraj was adopted, and Nehru delivered a speech which was socialist to the inconvenience of even Gandhi. But there he made it very clear that his idea of socialism, his idea of total political independence, they might sound unusual concepts, but out of the genius of Indian people themselves, they cannot be imposed from above or from outside. So Nehru had a very realistic and theoretically also sound sense of the cultural dynamics of this country.
One of the experts you include in this book is titled Orthodox of all religions unite, and that deals with how Hindus and Muslims, both Hindu and Muslim extremists or communal leaders, both united to oppose the Sharda Act, which sought to prevent child marriage.
Yeah, and another context of that article was the controversy about the status of Ahmadiyya Muslims in Islam. As you know, the Ahmadiyya Muslims, they are not considered Muslim by Orthodox Muslims. In Pakistan, in fact, Ahmadiyya cannot declare himself a Muslim. So that was also there at the back of Nehru's mind, though he did not mention it there. And interestingly, Venu, Iqbal reacted to that article very violently. Iqbal wrote an article, in fact, a series of articles titled, Pandit does not know anything about Islam. He was very angry with Jawaharlal Nehru for writing that article, in which he attacked Islam and not Islam, orthodox forces within Islam and Hinduism both, for this particular reason that they were opposing the act which was aimed at preventing the child marriage. Now this raises a different question also, which is a very contemporary question. I mean, if I were to criticize any practice of any religion, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, whatever, one can always say that you do not know anything. Have you read Quran? And particularly, have you read Quran in Arabic? Or have you read Vedas in Sanskrit? Or have you read Manu Smriti in Sanskrit? And so on and so forth. Such questions ignore one basic thing. And that basic thing is that in order to oppose something, apart from scriptural wisdom, there is something called human wisdom also. Vivek, as they call it in Hindi. I'm sure in Malayalam also the word must be Vivek. So there is a Vivek also, which every human being gets out of his experience, her experience, and this experience is not confined to personal experience. When I talk of experience, how can I ignore or forget the contribution of all the literature which I have read, or all the lectures I have heard from various political people, literary people, religious people? All these things have worked as an input in constructing my Vivek. And that Vivek, at least to me, tells me 2 or 3 things very clearly. One, you cannot treat any human being as lower or higher just by the accident of birth. You cannot describe a person lower because of his caste or her caste, gender or ethnicity. 2, no scripture, whether it is secular or religious, I mean whether it is a religious book or it is Marxist dogma, no knowledge system can claim to be the final statement of truth. Therefore, the question is not whether Nehru knew Islam or not. The question is that whether the practice of child marriage is to be accepted or not accepted. That is the fundamental question. You can justify anything by going by the scriptures. People try to justify widow burning in the name of the scriptures. People try to justify the poor, lamentable conditions of widows going by the scriptures. People justify many things going by the scriptures. So for Nehru and for any sensible human being, the question is not whether you know Islam or Hinduism or not. The question is that whether you want an 8-year-old girl to become a wife and to die at the age of 10 or 11. That is the fundamental question. And Nehru knew the answer to this question. Therefore, in spite of Iqbal's anger, Nehru knew that there is something that orthodox of all religions unite, and that's why the sarcastic title of the essay, Orthodox of all religions must unite.
Let me, for the audience in particular, you would know where this comes from, read a passage which is an excerpt of a speech made about Nehru after his death. And we can play a little game as to who wrote it. I'll just read the few paragraphs, and it's beautifully written and beautifully spoken when it was made as a speech. A dream has been shattered, a song silenced, a flame has vanished in the infinite. I presume this was originally delivered in Hindi, and this is the English translation. It was the dream of a world without fear and without hunger. It was the song of an epic that had the echo of the Gita and the fragrance of the rose. It was the flame of a lamp that burnt all night, fought with every darkness, showed us the way, and one morning attained nirvana. Bharat Mata is stricken with grief today. She has lost her favorite prince. Humanity is sad today. It has lost its devotee. Peace is restless today. Its protector is no more. The downtrodden have lost their refuge. The common man has lost the light in his eyes. The curtain has come down. The leading actor on the stage of the world displayed his final role and taken the bow, has displayed his final role and taken the bow. Anybody in the audience can guess who wrote this? Who delivered the speech? It's written beautifully, right? A great fan of Nehru. You want to tell them, Purushottam?
It is even more moving in Hindi. And it is the speech delivered by Atal Bihari Vajpayee in Rajya Sabha. And in fact, Venu did not read that part. Atal Bihari Vajpayee went to the extent of saying something for which today he will be described anti-national for sure. He said that Maharishi Valmiki has described Ram, Bhagwan Ram, as a combination of contradictions, as someone carrying paradoxes within him. So Nehru was exactly like that. पंडित जी भी कुछ ऐसे ही व्यक्ति थे in Hindi. He was a Shanti Doot, but he was ready to fight for justice and peace by any weapons available. सो पंडित जी ऐसे ही व्यक्ति थे, एक तरफ शांति दूसरी तरफ क्रांति, उनके व्यक्तित्व में दोनों चीजें थीं। जैसा कि भगवान राम को महर्षि वाल्मीकि ने वृद्धों का सामंजस्य कहा है। So I don't know what would happen to Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee if he were to deliver this speech in today's Rajya Sabha. But that is exactly what happened in May 1964. He spoke in Rajya Sabha, and certainly it is one of the most moving obituaries to Nehru. This is true.
Let me read that paragraph also, since you referred to that in English. Vajpayee ji says, in the Ramayana, Maharshi Valmiki has said of Lord Rama that he brought the impossible together. In Panditji's life, we see a glimpse of what the great poet said. He was a devotee of peace and yet the harbinger of revolution. He was a devotee of non-violence but advocated every weapon to defend freedom and honor. He was an advocate of individual freedom and yet was committed to bringing about economic equality. He was never afraid of a compromise with anybody, but he never compromised with anyone out of fear. His policy towards Pakistan and China was a symbol of this unique blend. Please remember, Vajpayee was the biggest critic of Nehru over the China war, and he led the charge in the opposition. He said, he speaks about Nehru, in talking about Nehru's position on Pakistan and China, it has generosity as well as firmness. It is unfortunate that this generosity was mistaken for weakness, while some people looked upon his firmness as obstinacy. There's much that we can talk about the China war, but to go to something closer at heart, Nehru was not a perfect man. There are many mistakes that he made. And for us in Kerala, the unforgivable mistake that he made was perhaps dismissal of the EMS government in 1957, which was one of the first instances of the central government encroaching into state powers and arbitrarily dismissing an elected government. Thank God it has not happened too often in recent times, especially after Sarkaria Commission, but still it was one of his black marks or one of his black spots.
Undoubtedly. And had Nehru been a perfect man, he would not be interesting to me as a historian. Perfect men do not make history. They make good people, good husband, good office workers, but not historical figures. But I cannot and do not defend act of dismissal of the elected government in Kerala. And I will put that act even in a wider context. Venu, we should always remember that in 1957, this was the first elected communist government in the world. This was for the first time that a communist party came to power, not through revolution, but through democratic process. So this government had a value, a symbolic, in fact, a historical value, not only for India, but for the world. And Nehru, being an internationalist, being very conscious of international situation and being a self-conscious intervener in the international situations, I am really surprised and I sometimes wonder that why he did not understand the implications of this act. And let me tell you, this is something what I cannot vouch for it because I have not seen this in any written source or anything, but it must be there if one finds for it, one searches for it. In a public meeting recently, Manishankar Iyer described an incident. He said that I was watching the proceedings from the spectators gallery in Lok Sabha, and Dange, criticizing Nehru government for dismissal of Namboodiripad government in Kerala, said that you have lost your moral scene by this act, just as Yudhishthir lost his moral scene in Mahabharata when he spoke the half-truth, Ashwathama is dead, whether elephant or man I do not know. So this famous story from Mahabharata, Ashwathama Hato, Narova, Kunjarova. And the story goes after this, that before that, Yudhishthir's chariot did not touch the earth. It always ran 6 inches above the earth or 1 foot above the earth. After this, it came down. So Dange, as Manishankar Iyer told us, Dange told Nehru कि इसके बाद आपका भी रथ जमीन पर आ गया है. So this was a great failure, not only politically, but intellectually and morally. And there certainly cannot be any defense of that particular, undoubtedly.
So while we all admire Nehru and his contribution to the building of modern day India can never be denied or can never be questioned, but it remains a reality that he was human. He was our first prime minister. There were many mistakes which were made as part of this nation building process. The dismissal.
I'll just add one thing here, Venu. I personally feel, I am constantly studying Nehru these days. Nehru was Democrat to a fault. And he did not use his prime ministerial authority in a way that only his will prevail. And sometimes it created very uncomfortable and sometimes even funny situations. You see, Krishna Menon and Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, both were very dear to Nehru. Vijay Lakshmi was his sister and Krishna Menon was his very close friend since the days of London. And on matters of foreign policy, they were always at loggerheads. Vijay Lakshmi supposedly was pro-West and Krishna Menon was supposedly pro-communist. And the implementation of foreign policy of Nehru government, there were situations where these two close confidants of Nehru were constantly at loggerheads with each other. Nehru was irritated. Nehru was absolutely sometimes did not know what to do. So in a letter to Krishna Menon, he made a very interesting remark. He said that sometimes when you people fight amongst each other, I think that there is a way of dealing with these things as they do in the Soviet Union, which means that silence at least one of them permanently. So that this constant bickering is over. He never did so. And he never silenced his opponents permanently. And sometimes, I would say, even unwisely succumbed to various kind of pressures. Because as a prime minister, he did not see himself as the ultimate leader. He saw himself as a kind of patron of various projects, various places. I mean, to be very frank, this whole Ram Mandir Babri Masjid controversy, to put it very frankly, one aspect of its continuation was the indifference on part of the UP government of Govind Vallabh Pant. They did not take the proper action at proper time, and Nehru did not force them that you must do this. Similarly, the state I come from, Madhya Pradesh, this powerful politician Dwarka Prasad Mishra, he once, this is a matter of record, Venu, he once challenged Nehru that, look sir, if you contest from my hometown, that is Jabalpur, I'll defeat you in the election. So don't argue with me. So these were the situations. We should not confuse Nehru administration with the administration, for example, like Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi was a very different kind of person. Okay. So Nehru had his limitations, Nehru had his problems, Nehru had his weaknesses, but at the same time, when we talk of Nehru, we should always keep in mind that he almost at no time tried to impose his will to the exclusion of the wills of his political and administrative colleagues. That was the reason.
Absolutely. I worked for almost 7 years with President Pranab Mukherjee when he was finance minister and when he was president, and he was a great devotee of Nehru. And he would always eat two things which he constantly said. One, imagine a newly independent India, the large majority of the people illiterate, poor, hardly any education, women still very much at the recess of society, not really come out to the forefront. But Nehru would go from village to village, election campaign to election campaign, explaining to the people of India what is democracy, what is the nation that we have built, what are our institutions, why it is important that they participate in elections and they vote right. So Nehru was this, he never lost faith in the people. He believed that he could educate them and he could instill in them the quality of democracy.
I have included the radio address which Nehru gave before the first general election. And that radio address in the printed pages runs to 20 odd pages, which means he must have been speaking on the radio for more than 1 hour or so. And that address is not about the policies of Congress. That's not an appeal for the votes. It's about the importance of democracy, it's about the importance of election, and it's about how you should participate in the election. and what should be your parameters of deciding when you vote for whosoever you vote. So Nehru in that sense belonged to that generation of post-colonial leaders who essentially saw themselves as educators and teachers of their people, whether in Asia or in Africa or anywhere. Nehru was one of them. And about this making people realize the importance of democracy, I saw this newsreel years ago in my childhood, and I still remember one particular scene from that, in which Nehru is speaking in a public meeting, and he is saying, डेमोक्रेसी के मानी ये नहीं होते कि मैं आपका राजा हो गया, मैं आपका सेवक हूं और आपको हक है कि अगर मैं गलती करूं तो आप मुझे कान पकड़ के कुर्सी से उतार दें. He won't use the words like पिछवाड़ा etc. because he was too sophisticated for that, but he certainly said कि कान पकड़ के कुर्सी से उतार दें. More importantly, since you were mentioning all this, while evaluating Nehru or for that matter anybody, I mean I'm making a general statement, when you evaluate a historical figure, a political figure, we should keep the whole context in mind. Not going into details, let me just remind you that in 1947, the average life expectancy in India was 31, right? In 1964, the average life expectancy was around 49 years. This increase of 18 years in average life expectancy in just 17 years. This could not have been possible without proper policies on health, housing, education, and other measures of public welfare. And especially considering the fact that what kind of economy we were left with by the colonial powers, the great, terrible Bengal famine, then the partition trauma in which millions were killed, millions were displaced, the whole project of resettling the refugees had to be conducted, the whole ministry had to be conducted, created for the refugee settlement and all that. With all these problems, Nehru leadership, I am not saying Nehru, but I would say Nehru's leadership and his times could bring the life expectancy of this country from 31 to 49. I don't think this is a mean achievement. I think this is a unique achievement in the history of world. This has to be taken care of.
Right. Nehru as a Democrat, one of the most important pieces which has been much talked about in by scholars who have studied Nehru, by people who know Nehru, has been the article called "We Want No Caesars." I will once again read a brief paragraph. This was written by Nehru himself, and I will leave Purushottam to explain to you. We will just have two more short questions, and then we will open up the discussion to the audience. So this article, "We Want No Caesars," Nehru writes, "Men like Jawaharlal, with all their capacity for great and good work, are unsafe in a democracy. He calls himself a Democrat and a socialist, and no doubt he does so in all earnestness. But every psychologist knows that the mind is ultimately a slave to the heart, and logic can always be made to fit in with the desires and irrepressible urges of a person. A little twist, and Jawaharlal might turn a dictator, sweeping aside the paraphernalia of a slow-moving democracy. He might still use the language and slogans of democracy and socialism, but we all know how fascism has fattened on this language and then cast it away as useless lumber." You want to explain the context in which Nehru wrote about himself?
Nehru wrote this at the height of his popularity in 1936, and at the same time he also noted in his autobiography the legends which were circulating in his time and which we also heard in our childhood. The legends underlining the sacrifice of himself and his family, that they used to send their laundry to Paris. So Nehru has written in autobiography that I have not heard more absurd nonsense than this. Which family would be idiotic enough to send their laundry to Paris or anywhere? But this was there, this legend was there. Nehru was at the height of his popularity. And at the height of his popularity, he was writing this piece, reminding himself That, I mean, only recently we have started using the expression democratic dictatorship. This expression has become very common in contemporary political discourse. And people are talking of how democracies turn into dictatorships. It happens because of popularity, because of uncritical adulation of the leader. When leader is equated with the country, country is equated with the leader. That is Indira is India, Modi is India, and nowadays for some people even Mr. Adani is India. So if you attack Adani, you are attacking India. So this is how the democracies die, to borrow the title of a very famous recent book. Nehru was conscious of this because he was a very keen student of international affairs. He was a very keen student, particularly of fascism and Nazism as a political phenomenon. And he knew that neither Mussolini nor Hitler, quote unquote, were unpopular leaders. Both were hugely popular. In fact, Hitler's popularity was legendary. So how this popularity changes your mind, and he is indicating very clearly that even if someone is very logical, even if someone is very rational, the impulses of your heart works in such a way that you can rationalize anything you do. I mean, to butt in a bit of personal, I am a smoker. And rationally I know it's a very bad habit. And yet, it's important because that gives me intellectual excitement, you know. Without that, I cannot work intellectually if I do not smoke. How will I write an article if I am not constantly smoking? So all this nonsense we all do with our bad habits, with our, as he says, desires and irrepressible desires of heart. Nehru was warning himself. And Venu, I feel this, that when Nehru was behaving like a democrat to a fault, he was keeping this warning to himself in mind. When he was not resisting the pressures from Indira Gandhi and other Congress leaders to dismiss the government in Kerala, probably he had this warning in heart.
Absolutely.
That I should not push my authority as Prime Minister beyond a point. If the party wants this, let it be. So this was a warning which I believe remained with Nehru till his last. Because he knew that he is hugely popular. He knew that even in the wake of defeat in China-India conflict, his popularity suffered a dent, but not that much. He continued to be popular. And therefore, he was very conscious of this popularity. He wrote at other places that Indian people have given me unimaginable love. And therefore, I think he was constantly warning himself that this popularity, this acceptance should not turn him into a dictator. And that is why we need no seizures. Just a minute. This is true in 1936. This is 100 times truer in 2023.
There is also a fascinating passage which I read in the book and which amused me about Nehru's sense of humor and how he responded to hero worship with a sense of humor. He writes, public functions, addresses by municipalities and local boards and other public bodies, processions and the like, used to be a great strain on my nerves and my sense of humor and reality. The most extravagant and pompous language would be used, and everybody would look so solemn and pious that I felt an almost uncontrollable desire to laugh or to stick out my tongue. Imagine Nehru sitting in a public meeting with an audience of millions saying, I felt like sticking out my tongue, or stand on my head just for the pleasure of shocking and watching the reactions on the faces of this august assembly. So he was, once again, very human and with a great sense of humor.
Great sense of humor. In fact, there is one incident. Rafi Ahmed Kidwai, once he came to his place and Nehru was, peeling out the mangoes and not mangoes, the apples. He was peeling out the apples and offered him. So he said, Pandit ji, apple ka sara vitamin to chilke mein hota hai. The vitamins are contained in the peel. You are throwing it away in the skin of the apple. So Rafi Ahmed Kidwai writes that Pandit ji ne मेरे सामने से सेब की प्लेट हटा ली, छिलके मेरे सामने रख, बोले मैं सेब खाता हूँ, आप विटामिन खाइए.
So, Purushottam, let me end at least my series of questions with one question which deals with contemporary politics. As you know, the Congress party has been struggling with this dilemma of how to deal with the ruling party, the BJP, and the Hindutva forces. Should they go the soft Hindutva way? Should they go the hard secularism way? And if Nehru was alive today, what would he advise his great-grandson Rahul Gandhi?
In fact, well, if he takes my advice at all, I will advise him neither to go soft Hindutva nor hard secularism. The simple way is to go Nehruvian way, which is not an unnecessary display of religiosity and at the same time respect, sensitivity to all religious traditions, all religious groups, but not to all reactionary practices in the name of religion. Secondly, most important thing is to try to focus and to bring the focus of politics on the fundamental political and economic issues. Of course, on cultural issues also. But I personally feel that this soft Hindutva, hard secularism, both are outdated misnomers. I never use them in my political commentary. I do not understand what people mean by soft Hindutva. I do not understand what people mean by hard secularism. We should not forget that apart from the dictionary definition of secularism, the greatest achievement of Indian nationalism has been that it has gone beyond dictionary definitions of many concepts and conceptions. Secularism, if you look at the dictionary, means the separation of church from the state. In India, secularism means and has been meaning right since 1931 Karachi Congress resolution, the equal respect or equal distance from all religions. This secularism gives space even to atheism. We should also not forget that in Indic linguistic tradition, the word dharma connotes something more than religion. It's not merely a doctrine, it is something more. And therefore, when by the 42nd Amendment to the Constitution, the word secularism was formally inserted into the preamble of the Constitution, Venu in Hindi translation of Constitution, the word used was not dharma nirpekshta but panth nirpekshta. Because dharma in Indian tradition also means law. It also means a certain social contract. So these complexities are there, and I do not think that these expressions like soft Hindutva or hard secularism capture any of these complexities. So coming back again to your question, my advice to the Congress leadership would be to go back to Nehruvian worldview, Nehruvian politics, update it in accordance with the changing times. After all, Nehru died in 1964. You cannot copy-paste anybody on any changed times, but you can learn a lot from that, and you can evolve. You can evolve a lot of Nehruvian approach to suit the contemporary world and Indian politics.
Thank you. In fact, just yesterday, the Industries Minister gave a talk on pluralism and secularism, where he also pointed out that within Malayalam language, there has been a debate following the Constitution's practice in the Hindi text. Here too, there are people who prefer the term Mada Nirapeksha as compared to Madederatvam, emphasizing the neutrality of the state when it comes to religions rather than just saying all religions are treated equally.